Namaskar viewers and listeners of the Great Game Reloaded. I am Tilak Divesha. The 8th February 2024 elections in Pakistan were heavily rigged to exclude Imran Khan. You may well ask, why talk about these elections a year and a half later, after they have been done and dusted? And what's so unusual? Aren't all elections in Pakistan rigged? The reason is that what was suspected and talked about has now been confirmed by first a recently leaked report of the Commonwealth Observer Group or COG and later by the actual report itself. The COG was an international mission that monitored the vote on the ground. It found, and I quote, serious shortcomings, systemic manipulation and suppression of fundamental freedoms, unquote. That's why it is important to talk about the 2024 elections even now. The COG report found widespread fraud, rigging, manipulation and accused the government of violating, quote, fundamental political rights including freedom of association, assembly and expression, unquote. Such rigging tilted the result in favor of Pakistan's current government. But here's the surprising thing. That report was buried till now, suppressed, hidden from public view. It was finally released at the end of September 2025. By then, it had already been leaked. Commentators are surprised that for the first time in Commonwealth's 70-year history, an election report was not published when it should have been. Quite possibly, the leaked report may have forced the COG to publish its report. So the moot question is, why did Pakistan's military-backed regime go to such lengths to manipulate the vote? Why did international observers remain silent for over a year? And what does this mean for Pakistan's future and for India? But first, let's start with the big picture. Pakistan has had over a dozen general elections since its creations. None of them were free and fair except one. The 1970 elections were an exception. Most observers have held that it was the first and the last free and fair election held in Pakistan. It led to a civil war and the breakup of Pakistan, thus convincing the army that never again could Pakistan afford to have free and fair elections. Incidentally, the 1970 elections were free not because the dictator General Yahya Khan believed in democracy. Far from it. They were free because the army's intelligence assessment was that the elections would return a hung assembly, allowing Yahya Khan to be kingmaker. They were totally off the mark. This provoked Henry Kissinger to chide Yahya Khan that, and I quote, for a dictator, you run a lousy election, unquote. Fast forward to the February 2024 elections. The elections were held after the then Prime Minister Imran Khan had fallen out with the army and was removed from office in 2022 through a no-confidence motion. Pakistan went to the polls on 8th February 2024. These elections stand out not just for the scale of the fraud, but for how brazenly it was done. It was another case study of how the military hijacks politics and how Pakistan's ballot boxes have rarely reflected the people's will. Instead, every election has reflected the will of one institution, the army. In this case, it was the will of the army chief, Asim Munir. Munir wanted one outcome: keep Imran Khan out because of his personal animosity against him. The resources of the state were mobilized to achieve this objective. As the COG report confirms, the elections were engineered to deliver that one outcome. Let's break it down. Pakistan's army's playbook of rigging elections traverses a three-stage plan. Pre-poll rigging, rigging on election day, and post-poll rigging. And here's what the Commonwealth observers noted, and I quote, one party's ability to contest the election was consistently limited, undermining the principle of a level playing field, unquote. That party, of course, was Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, or PTI. Prior to the elections, Imran Khan was in jail. His party had been battered. His candidates were forced to contest as independents, stripped even of PTI's electoral symbol, the cricket bat. In Pakistan, symbols are everything. Parties don't just contest with names, they contest with images. The lion, the arrow, the bicycle. For PTI, that symbol was the bat. Every voter recognized it. Every supporter looked for it on the ballot. But just weeks before the vote, the courts struck it down. PTI was stripped of its symbol. Its identity was diluted. As a consequence, PTI candidates had to contest as independents, each with a different and unfamiliar symbol. Imagine the confusion. One PTI candidate had a kettle as a symbol in one constituency, another had a chair in another constituency, another had a ladder. No common brand, no party identity. This was not just a legal technicality, it was surgical electoral sabotage. In addition, thousands of PTI workers and leaders were arrested. Their homes were raided, PTI offices were closed, and their lawyers and proposers harassed, and the nomination processes distorted. Journalists covering these abuses were detained, further shrinking the democratic space.
पूरा मैंने एहतजाज के सिलसिले में आई थी। मैं खाली हाथ आई हूँ और मुझे 2 दफ़ा गिरफ्तार करने की कोशिश की है। मैं भागकर छुपकर फिर बाहर आई हूँ और अपनी गाड़ी में बैठी हूँ। तो ये यहाँ से अंदाज़ा लगा लें कि एक निहत्थे शहरी को अमन से नहीं रहने दिया जा रहा, कि हम अपने मुल्क में पूरा मैंने एहतजाज भी नहीं कर पा रहे। और दूसरी बात यह कि खान साहब को किस वजह से गिरफ्तार किया है, जो केस रिलायबल ही नहीं है। गिरफ्तार कर लिया है तो फिर हमें एहतजाज करने दें।
Then there was media censorship and narrative control. On election day, cellular services were shut down nationwide. The excuse? Security. The reality? Disruption. This crippled the election management system, or EMS, forcing manual transmission of results. Exactly the kind of opacity that allows tampering and manipulation. Independent monitors found discrepancies in forms 45, 46 and 47 that tabulated results. The COG report noted, and I quote, a number of discrepancies between polling station result forms and tabulated result forms at the constituency level, which may have resulted in some candidates being unlawfully, unquote, declared winners. The Commonwealth Mission saw all of this. Their report says Pakistan violated, quote, fundamental political rights, including freedom of association, assembly, and expression, unquote. In other words, the elections were rigged from start to finish. Post-election, reserved seats for women and minorities were withheld from PTI-aligned independents. Even when the Supreme Court intervened and allowed these seats to the PTI in July 2024, the Election Commission refused to do so. A constitutional amendment was rammed through the Parliament. This set up a constitutional bench of the Supreme Court that overturned the previous decision of the full bench of the Supreme Court. The decision ensured that the PTI got no reserved seats. Now here's the unfortunate thing. The COG submitted its final report in November 2024, but the report never saw the light of day till now. Instead, the Commonwealth Secretariat praised Pakistan's democratic process. Imagine the irony. The report held, and I quote, the systemic manipulation of results and suppression of political rights represents a serious breach of Pakistan's obligations under the Commonwealth Charter, unquote. It further held that, quote, the conduct of state institutions, including the Election Commission, fell short of international standards and compromised the credibility of the process, unquote. In plain words, the report said the military stole the election and that the election was engineered. But those words never made it to the public until the leak. The result of a flawed election are there for all to see. The Parliament has no legitimacy, the Prime Minister has no credibility, the polity has been distorted, by stealing the election from the PTI, whose supporters have been radicalized. If the intention was to buy stability by suppressing the truth, it did not succeed. It only prolonged the chaos. So this wasn't just Pakistan rigging its election. This was also international complicity. The report vindicated PTI's long-standing accusation about widespread pre- and post-poll rigging. They had been saying all along the 2024 elections were the most rigged in Pakistan's history. PTI leaders have been quick to respond to the report. Zulfi Bukhari, a close aide of Imran Khan, said, and I quote, "This is nothing less than burying the truth. The Commonwealth's silence gave cover to a government that never had the people's mandate." Unquote. So what happens now? Three scenarios are possible. One, the status quo holds. The Sharif government clings on, propped up by the army, but public anger simmers, protests continue, and legitimacy evaporates. Two, PTI's resurgence. Imran Khan's popularity remains unmatched. The official publication of the Commonwealth report could trigger demands for fresh elections. Three, deeper military rule. If chaos escalates, the army could tighten its grip further, abandoning even the pretense of democracy. Whatever the path, Pakistan's fig leaf democracy has taken a big hit. Now, why should India care about Pakistan's rigged elections? For one major reason. Whenever the army feels cornered, it tries to provoke India. Rigged elections means angry citizens. Angry citizens means protests, unrest, and often chaos. To overcome this, the generals need a diversion strategy. For Pakistan's generals, that diversion is India. The losers of the elections are the people of Pakistan. They voted for change, but their vote was stolen by their own army and by an international system that looked away. The elections confirmed that the real power in Pakistan is in Rawalpindi, and specifically with the army chief. But here's the interesting thing. Despite all the manipulations, despite Imran Khan being in jail, he remains the most popular leader in Pakistan, and so does his party. And this is making the current government, and especially the army chief, desperate. That's the story, and that's the reality. I am Tilak Divesha. Thank you for watching. Do like, share and comment. Namaskar and Jai Hind.